Amphibian activity in relation to temperature change. Amphibians emerge and return to vernal pools during warmer weather. Vernal pools provide habitats and breeding grounds for the amphibians. Average temperatures range from 46 to 59 degrees Fahrenheit in Southwick in March and April, and 43 to 55 degrees in Uxbridge. Our question was, will there be a difference in time or temperature when the species emerge at the two sites? The picture on the right shows the wood frog and the American toad, both seen at the Southwick location. The study occurred between March 2nd and April 9th. We had two sites, Southwick and Uxbridge. Southwick had two vernal pools, natural and man-made. Uxbridge had three, hotel, bog, and red. The picture on the right shows the red setup for the water temperature logger.
We implemented 10 Hobo data loggers between the two sites to record air and water temperature. 6 were deployed at Uxbridge and 4 were deployed in Southwick. Pitfall traps were also utilized at the Southwick site, while camera traps were utilized at the Uxbridge site. Visual observations twice a week were used as well to collect data upon first known activity. On the top right, we can see an example of the pitfall trap, and on the bottom right, we can see an example of the air temperature logger at the Uxbridge site. Initial activity at the Uxbridge site was observed on March 18th, and initial activity at the Southwick site was observed on March 20th. Temperatures on these days were 41 degrees Fahrenheit in Uxbridge with heavy rains, and 40 degrees in Southwick. Species that were initially seen were wood frogs and spring peepers. American toads and spotted salamanders followed soon after. Only 2 wood frogs were caught in the pitfall traps, and nothing was caught in the camera traps. On the top right, we can see an example of the wood frogs at the Uxbridge site, and on the bottom right, we can see an example of a tadpole at the Southwick site. And here we can see an example of the 3 main amphibian species that we saw through the course of the study. So on the left, we can see the example of a wood frog at the Southwick site. In the middle, we can see an example of spring peeper at the Southwick site, and on the right, we can see an example of the American toad.
3 out of 5 water data sensors recorded data who experienced failures. Average water temperature at Southwick was 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Uxbridge overall was 36. There was a significant difference between hotel at Uxbridge and the natural pool at Southwick. The graph on the right depicts the two, and water temperatures were significantly different at these two sites. Stat was negative 61 degrees of freedom, 688. This next graph shows daily water temperatures at hotel and the natural pool at Southwick. Hotel may have had cooler daily temperatures due to it being in central Massachusetts, which has a cooler average temperature this time of year.
All 5 of the data sensors that collected air temperature functioned properly. Average air temperature was higher at Southwick, being 44 degrees Fahrenheit, and Uxbridge that was 41 degrees Fahrenheit, and both were statistically significant. Air temperature during observed amphibian activity was 40.59 degrees, and 63.57 degrees between the 2 locations. On the right, we can see an example of this statistically significant figure. Here we can see an example of all attempt data taken throughout the study. The red line indicates when initial activity was observed. Here we're going to see an example of the max, min, and average temperatures between the 5 different locations. We can also see that most of these are close to each other, but there is some variance between some of the sites. So the conclusion that we formed through the study was that emergence at both sites was at 40 degrees Fahrenheit for air temperature and 32 degrees Fahrenheit for water temperature, but most of this emergence depended heavily on rain events. Water temperature played more of a part in the emergence, even when ice was still persistent. More yearly studies would have to be done on the subject and at other locations to narrow down when and at what temperature emergence happens. Methods such as acoustic logging and pitfall traps would have to continue to be used to collect data along with data sensors. Camera traps would have to continue to be tweaked to capture proper amphibian photos.